Hello and welcome to our webinar, Fearlessly Dominate the Digital Banking Revolution with Process Mining. My name is Stefan Lorenz. I'm the Global Industry Leader for Banking and Insurance at Software AG, and I will be your host for today. Before we dive into the topic, let me make two opening remarks regarding housekeeping. First remark is that I would like to make you aware that this webinar will be recorded and the recording has already started. And the second remark is that I would like to encourage you to ask questions. You can do so by using the Q&A tab at the right side of your screen. And we will then answer your questions at the end of this webinar. In case that we should not find enough time to answer all the questions, we will answer the questions afterwards by sending you an email with the answer. Good, and the entire webinar today will take about 50 minutes. So let's have a look what we are going to present to you. We will have three main speakers and three main topics. The topics are why, what, and how. After this brief introduction, I will start giving a short introduction to the process mining for banking topic, and I will focus on the two questions, why change and why now? And then we will have Monica from our ARIS Process Mining Center of Excellence, who will focus on what. Monica will show our demo that we created that is analyzing the customer onboarding process for corporate customers in the banking industry. And then we will have Dr. Nick Blackburn, our global evangelist for process mining, who will focus on the how theme. And Nick will focus on how organizations can implement high impact capabilities for process mining. Okay, then let's get started. Why change? Why now? Three numbers tell you an interesting story. The first number is 58%. In their last annual banking review, McKinsey published this number at the end of 2023, in December 2023, and the 58% are the number of banks that were expected to operate with a return on equity below the cost of equity in the previous year. And this is not really a very good number. And what is even less good is that this number increased from the previous year. But for me, this is really the essence why it is so difficult for banks to operate in a profitable way. The second number is 79%. And this is indicating the number of banks which believe that process mining can help them improving profitability. So that's very good for us to hear. But the challenge is that you probably have heard or even experienced yourselves that a lot of process mining prototypes or pilot projects are actually failing. So it's not easy to implement process mining. And actually the third number that is also coming from McKinsey is underlining this trend. So that's 70% of change programs that don't reach their stated goals. So this is underlining the fact that you need to select the right tool and that you need to have the right capabilities implemented to successfully implement process mining. And these numbers also underline the need that it is important to start the initiative now in order to support the strategic goals of CIOs in 2024 to increase growth or to increase revenue and also to increase profitability. But the question is, what is the right way to do this? We from Software AG believe that it's crucial to implement process mining in a continuously and intelligent way to be successful. And the question is, how can we do this? How can we achieve this? And actually the answer is coming from 3 questions that you can ask yourself. The first question is, what if you could reduce the transaction duration? This would mean that you could find out how long it takes you to process your transactions and where you're wasting time. The capabilities from process mining that you will need are process discovery and root cause mining. Second question is, what if you could lower your operating costs? That would mean that you could visualize the real execution sequence of your business process from end to end, and that you can easily identify where you are wasting money and what you can do to reduce the costs. Again, the capabilities that you can use from process mining are process modeling and process model improvements based on insights that you can gain from process mining data. And the last question is, what if you could optimize the quality of your processes? That would mean that you can reduce the errors and streamline the collaboration among your business units. The capabilities needed are discovery and analysis of user actions, which are coming from task mining. So if you use the right tool in the right way, and if you focus on these questions, then you have the basis to continuously and intelligently optimize your banking processes. And then you can achieve the following potential improvements in your banking processes. For example, you can reduce the duration of your customer onboarding. This is what Monica is showing in her demo later in this webinar. Or that you can reduce the duration of your mortgage processing. Or that you can reduce the costs of your KYC processes. And also reduce the costs in your KYC processes. So these are just some examples that were, or that are actually coming from global consulting companies. And of course, they always depend on the individual situation and on the individual requirements of organizations. But I think that these are very good examples to underline the huge potential that is coming from the optimization of banking processes based on process mining. To achieve these savings, it's critical to use a powerful tool and to have the right capabilities in place. And this is what Monica and Nick will explain to you right now. And to do so, I would like to hand over to Monica now.
Hello, everybody. So I'm glad that I can show you now the ARIS customer banking, the ARIS process mining demo for customer onboarding. As you already heard by my colleague, which I unfortunately didn't, I will give you a brief overview what you can do with the art of process mining and what would this help you in your daily business in the industry of banking. We will have a short round trip through parts of the ARIS platform. The process I want to show you right now is the onboarding process for corporate customers. We will have a brief discovery, like we will ask some questions, we will monitor some major KPIs, we will understand the root causes, get a little bit of transparency, what leads to a bad KPI. We will analyze some bottlenecks. We will have a short discussion about process compliance. And then, last but not least, talk a little bit about how to take actions to improve your process performance and compliance. As always, I want to tell you, process mining is an art which is already more than 20 years old. You get the most of it if you mine your processes from an end-to-end perspective. So let's go to the first slide. So in any case of any process or any project you ever run, the first question you may ask would be, what is the main problem of our process, of our project? And you will decide to define maybe some major KPIs and you want to get full transparency of how your actual work is already done. In means of customer onboarding, this means customer onboarding is more or less simply the collection of all activities beginning from customer identification to know your customer routines to finally, hopefully, to your risk rating and then to onboard your customer. And what maybe looks a little bit pretty straightforward can, of course, have a lot of roadblocks and issues, like you can have problems in the beginning of the process. If you have an inaccurate customer identification, you can have a problem in your sub-process, like you can have an invalid KYC processing, which all will lead to lots of extra work and rework, and in banking terms, in a negative trend of a false positive rate, and will in the end may lead to a loss of customers due to inefficient customer onboarding. Normally you will have a set of KPIs, which will be maybe altered by the means of your projects. But typically, when we are talking about process mining, we have some kind of process performance KPIs, like in this case, the turnaround time, also abbreviated with TAT of the whole process, but also for the sub process, which will be then also be mined, like the KYC process. We will have, of course, always to take the costs in mind, and for this particular use case, also the so-called false positive rate, which just measures the amountage of customer identifications or customer KYC processes which have to be rerun, which would be ideal positive if the process would work properly. This will all lead to much rework, which we will, of course, want to reduce. And so, like in all use cases, the first steps, when you start a process mining project, you always want to understand what is working well and what roadblocks or issues you need to remove. So by saying that, a jump into our product. As you can see, we are just on the same page. So we have, like Steffen already mentioned, a turnaround time for our process of approximately 100 days. And we also see that the sub-process only takes 40% of the whole time. So know your customer is obviously leading to a high amount to the total turnaround time. We also see some costs and a high false positive rate and a rework rate. So we can see, of course, again, our KPIs I've already mentioned. So we will see that the customer onboarding time of roughly 100 days can be easily split in means of banking time or customer time. So we can see with one glimpse that a lot of work is done on the banking side, and also that the wait time is much bigger than the actually processing time. These are all some kinds of indicators that maybe already lead to a lack of resources. We can also see here in this trend that this is a trend which persists over time. And we can also see here in the bottom that the KYC sub-process about 40 days is also there, and that a lot of non-KYC activities are taking place which are delaying the process. When we can drill down to the top 8 most time-consuming activities, we can easily spot that, for instance, the activity calculate risk rating is one of the most expensive activities, but we also see something like check document completeness or request customer documents also there. They are non-KYC relevant, but still slow down our process. And now these are things and analysis which you might say, okay, I can do this with my business intelligence tool or something, but here now is the big difference with process mining. You can really, with one click, get a full overview of the process. You can see all your activities, which activity is taking after which one, which are the KPIs below. And the next thing is you can also easily drill down to some meaningful events, like here, as we remembered, between the activities check document completeness and request customer documents, we have our first loop. Also, loops will certainly slow down our process, and this is the capability you only get with process mining. You can just click on it and see, okay, even though of all my processes, 29% of my processes having this loop. So maybe I have to improve something between in the customer identification phase. So this is our first finding: 29% processes fail or add a lot of amount in our customer identification process. We had also the calculate risk rating on our top 8 time-consuming activities, and if you click there, you could also see that only that 79% of these activities goes to the most wanted next activity, just review. But this also means that 21% does not lead to this activity, and you can also with one click and with this out-of-the-box analysis, you can see, okay, 79% go to review customer for ICE principle, but we have also two pathways where the customer was just declined because the process was too slow, or because of a negative KYC analysis, or even worse, we have to rework and reload the KYC data and start the rescoring again. So we are adding a lot of extra work to our process. So this would be our second finding. So then, after we have now gotten this process transparency, so we have really had a look with 1 or 2 clicks, what are my bottlenecks? Maybe we want to find the root cause of that. And also there, this is a functionality which is built inside the tool. You can ask any kind of symptom, any kind of error you want to analyze. You can put it as a symptom to the root cause miner. In my case, I want to find possible root causes, what makes my process slower than the normal average. So I have here my distribution widget of the distribution of the turnaround time, and I ask one simple question. Please tell me why my processes what are the possible root causes of all my processes which are taking longer than the average. I just click on perform analysis and I get a lot of information right here. So here again, my question, I can see I want to analyze all cases which are taking longer than 110 days. I can see in one glimpse 28% of my of all of my processes are taking longer than this average. So this is also a finding. We would have thought, okay, 100 days is maybe too long or too slow, but it's even worse in this case. And also that rework and non-compliance are under the top findings as possible root cause for this symptom. So as the switching between the slides and the presentation does not works so pretty like I wanted to do, I will not switch again to the slides, but this was what were the first two steps in our presentation. We made our discovery, and we had also we have begun to analyze our insights. So, but speaking about non-compliance, also with ARIS process mining, you get also a compliance check, and the compliance check means nothing more than less that you are measuring your actual process performance against your managed design. So maybe you have already in your company a process management tool, or maybe in our case, ARIS process management tool. Then you want to rely and to make a reality check. How close am I to my desired behavior? And there are two KPIs for today I want to give on your way. The one is the conformance rate. So the conformance rate gives you actually the percentage, how many process instances are 100% to your managed design. And then in ARIS process mining, you get also the possibility to add some kind of business rules. So there, really, you can implement all your business rules which will meet your regulatory requirements that your process also have to comply to. And here we see that we are only we have business rules in place, that the process maybe is in a structured way correct, but he is not compliant to a business rule. And this is this all sums up in this compliance rate of 51%. When we click on the conformance tab, we get then a list of conformance issues. And in my case, it's now a very easy example. I have only one conformance issue, which obviously leads to a more performant process and with less activities. And I have only one issue. This is the check of KYC results must not occur after check authorization signatures. I'm a little bit confused because I have modeled it this way. I would think this should be okay, but if I put it in the process context, I will see with one click why this is a problem. So this is where we're using the process model overlay, where you can see we have a problem that when you are following the process, that these two activities which are defined mandatory are skipped. So this check of KYC results should have never taken place because these two activities were skipped. And because we have skipped it, this may lead to a bad impact on our false positive KPI. So this was the fourth finding. Everything what you find in ARIS process mining can be shared in your team that you can work on this. So you can share everything, you can bookmark everything, and you can get every information either in your process mining group or even you can hand this over to your process owner in your company. And this is again where the integrated approach of the ARIS business transformation suite comes in really handy, because you can easily switch to the process management part of ARIS and start a change request. So you could, on the one hand, you could start fix every issue. So if an issue occurs, you can fix it by triggering an action, by informing people or blocking the data in the backend system or whatever you like. Or you could also take all your findings, what we had already here, and raise this as a change request to the process owner. So as we found out the customer onboarding process is too slow. We found out that we have a high dropout rate at the end of the process, that we have a problem in the execution of request customer documents and check document completeness, and that we have more than 30% of our customer onboarding processes which are taking longer than 100 days. And the last thing we could do here, we can simply paste here all our findings we had as a link, and the process owner, without knowing anything about process mining, can take now this change request, can relook your analysis, can decide if he wants to accept or decline the change request, and can roll out a new process. This would be the, let's see, the change pillar of our presentation, and let's have a look what it would look like if you would have rolled out this process. So the governance workflow was now not was not part of this demo, but normally after you roll out something within ARIS, everyone in the company who is attached to this process get informed. Either it could be the process owner or a process participant or a role which is designed, or just a person who has bookmarked this process. I have started a change request using just the integrated change request, posted all our findings there, and started it and asked the process owner for implementation, for process optimization based on our findings, which are triggered by process mining. Here, we are at the state that the new process, the transformed process, is already rolled out. You can see this here with this nice green label here, that I was asked as a process participant to confirm that I have read the changes and that I have understood it and that I work now compliant to the new way of working. Yeah. When we just have a quick look on the process model, we can see that these two activities, like the request customer documents and the check document completeness, are now assisted by an RPA bot, which will hopefully lead to a better data quality and to a much performant way of customer identification. And we can also see here that we have here by the risk rating a control in place which is managed by process mining, because this is the nice thing of Aris process mining, that everything you find out, every finding, you can decide, will this trigger an action to be documented as a risk or compliance issue? Will this just be an action for a business rule? Should this start any kind of workflow in the backend system, or should just somebody be informed? Or do you want to start a governance workflow? And this is really very powerful technology behind. So now we have these two little changes in mind, and I just want to give you another view on the software, as I have obviously also problems by switching. So I will show it now in this screen. And Nick, can you confirm that you still see my screen, please? So I'm on the compliance tab right now.
It works.
Yes, that's fine.
Perfect. So we see here our new 3 business rules in place. So obviously we are monitoring the rework. So we want to limit our loop spec based on process compliance or anything else. And also we have 2 new rules here in place, that if some activity which we think is mandatory and shall not be skipped, will not be skipped, will be blocked in the backend system, and some kind of stakeholder will be informed. So we are assuring process compliance here on this way, and this is powered by process mining. The last thing I wanted to show is, after you have implemented something, you always have to prove if it's work and if it's running. And also here we have something in place. You can make every kind of management dashboard. So in the beginning, we started with a very high amount of turnaround time. So we had some performance problems measured by the turnaround time of customer onboarding and KYC turnaround time. And also we had a process compliance problem with a very high number of false positive rate and a rework rate. And we can see after these first 2 changes what we had, driven by the process transparency and process compliance, we will certainly have a positive impact on our major KPIs. If you improve not only the process performance, but of course also the process compliance, this will lead, of course, to a significant reduction in your backlogs, and your team can respond more quickly and responsive to emerging risks and incidents. With that, now I would like to go back to my presentation. So now maybe you ask yourself how to get data into Aris process mining, and I can just tell it, there are several ways. So wherever your application lies, if you have a cloud application, then you can use the data ingestion API, or use some kind of workflow tools which calls the data ingestion API. You can use also our software G products like WebMethods.io, which comes with more than 600 connections. If you have already a data lake established in your company, you can also go for the GDBC extractor. If you want to get data out of SAP, use the SAP extractor, or my favorite, to be honest, if you have more older systems like on mainframes or on legacy systems, you can also get this data out of more than 150 legacy systems using Connex extractor, which is also provided by Software G. Nevertheless, if you want to start just with the pilot, you can, of course, start with a simple snapshot analysis and just upload your event logs there. And by doing that, you all get the power of Aris process mining, including Aris process mining as a part of Aris. So you also get the benefits of process documentation, analysis, performance, compliance, dashboards, changes, and actions. Next slide, please. And you don't have to start from scratch. Aris process mining comes with a built-in Aris gallery, which just sums up our accelerators. An accelerator is more or less just a typical use case, a scenario with which answers 5 to 10 business questions. It comes with a lot of analytics, analysis, matrix, and including the data integration. And for banking, we have a dedicated one for loan application. If you don't find a scenario which is, if you're looking for a scenario which is not listed here, don't yeah, just reach out for us. In that case, for our ARIS product manager, Mr. Avari, I will send you the email address, the contact details then in the chat. And he is our product manager responsible for ARIS process mining and visibility with the special topic of the ARIS gallery and strategic partnerships. And I think, Steffen, with that, I'm done. No, I'm not done. We are also very proud that there were a lot of analyst rankings in the last time, and I just want to mention two. So the first one is the Gartner quadrant, which is in the middle, where we were in the leaders quadrant, and for us very important, there were 4 use cases, and we won the one for business transformation and for process automation. And then the second one is the Forrester Wave, process intelligence wave, which not only looks on process mining as a single capability, but looks on process management and mining as a combined capability. And then there we are listed as leader of the leader. But I think this was my last slide.
This was indeed your last slide, yes.
Thank you, Steffen. And for that, I want to hand over to Nick, please.
Great. Thank you so much, Monica. I know you're fighting with the webinar tool there to show off the tool, so I appreciate that. It's always really useful to see the tool in action. So just take a second to situate ourselves here. Stefan has explained the why, that there's a lot of potential in transformation, and that process mining is a really innovative tool, even though it's been around for 20 years, to really uncover some of these opportunities to make a real impact in banking operations, whether that's reducing times it takes for your account to get onboarded, or optimizing KYC operations, which every bank has to do, and every bank has to show that audit trail that they have properly onboarded customers. Then Monica's shown us the kind of the what, like how the tool actually works in practice, and done some use cases of how to actually start with an analysis and actually then do some root cause analysis and dig into the data, do some exploratory analysis to actually get some ideas and get some outcomes, and then actually feed them back into the process, show some improvement, and then demonstrate that back in a process mining tool. So we've done the why, we've done the what. I'm now going to talk a bit about the how. So you don't get the data straight in the tool, as Monica just showed. We need to work with that data, extract the data, and that takes organization on your side with your team. So I'm going to talk now about the way that you actually build this capability, because I think it's important to emphasize that process mining is as much a capability as it is a piece of software, and you need to think about how you bring together all of the different teams within the bank to make process mining actually happen. So I've got a few slides here around organizing, how to think about organizing yourself, the different stakeholder groups that you need to engage to really make sure that you're able to get high value, high impact process mining. So I'm hoping that as I show these slides, we can generate some questions and lead straight into the Q&A, because this is the part when we're thinking about the how, that it's always slightly different. It's always going to depend on the context at your bank, work in the way that you work. So very much see these slides as points of emphasis and questions to ask, as much as templated solutions of how you deploy process mining. Really important to emphasize that people always drive change. Technology is an enabler, but it's people, it's teams, and it's how they work together that really unlock the way to access, get the data, then make sure you're asking the right questions of that data so that you can deliver the business outcomes that you're working towards. That Stefan kind of highlighted the opportunity there. So on this slide, we're just talking about a framework of how to bring teams and people together and establish ways of working to make sure that we're focused on where the value is within your banking operations and how to actually make a change. So rather than just highlight that there are problems, we're actually working towards solving them. So there are lots of different ways to think about how to use process mining specifically here. Just to flag here about making sure you have the ability to liaise with the different areas like the data administration teams who hold the source system data, especially in financial services. There's always going to be governance and compliance when working with data. So the process mining capability needs to recognize working with sensitive data. You need to be very clear about the data that you're asking for, how you're going to use it, and how to alleviate any concerns around privacy. So for process mining, we don't very often at all need personally identifiable information, but the team needs to understand the ways the bank has set up safeguards to access and work with that data. And then also, it sounds a bit meta, the process of process mining. So Monica showed a specific use case in a specific data set, but what we want to do is have a process mining capability that can have multiple projects, multiple use cases, and really scale a capability within the bank so that you're giving a lot of different areas of the bank, lots of transformation teams, interesting use cases, interesting data sets. How you do that is to think about adding multiple projects, and it's going to be slightly different each project that you run, but you can have what I like to call a cookbook, where you kind of work out how you're able to build analyses and get value from it, and make sure that you're learning lessons each time you add a new use case, that you're able to get to value faster because you've worked out the different teams you need to engage, what works, what doesn't, so that you can build momentum within your capability. The next thing to emphasize as you're starting this, so we just mentioned there about creating an operating model and ways of working. It's not really to bite off more than you can chew in the first instance. If you're starting a capability, it's maybe to limit the scale of your ambition at that starting point. So there's a maturity scale that we can go up, and it's really useful, I think, to kind of call that out and recognize that when you start, you want to get to a valuable analysis as quick as possible, and the way that you structure your team to do that in the first instance is going to be different from when you have multiple use cases, tapping into multiple data sources and feeding back via automation triggers and re-engineering a process via governance and business process management tools. The ability of your team to deliver against that changes over time. So when you're starting out, it's better to think about what are the data sets that are easier for you to work with. How do you create an analysis working with a team that has an immediate problem and that is highly engaged, so that you can build this use case to show within your organization, this is a process mining capability that is delivering results. One of the problems is when you work with too complicated a data set, you end up taking more time to prepare the data. And what you want to do when you're starting especially is to show that we can work scrappy in order to deliver value quickly. And then you can start to build the credibility within the organization, and that can often unlock doors to access different data sets, access different teams, and potentially access different change capabilities, such as the automation team. Monica had mentioned, say, an RPA solution. Sometimes you have to prove yourself with a few use cases to show that you understand how to, one, deliver value with process mining, but two, operate within the context of your bank in order to get to these higher maturity projects. So this is about calling out that when you start, you want to make sure that you're delivering value fast, building your skill set as a process mining team, so that you can deliver against more complicated process and hopefully higher impact and higher value change in that transformation journey. So I've mentioned a few times how important people are. Who are those people that you need to engage and work with in order to kind of deliver a high impact process mining series of projects and ultimately a capability? Every organization will call these roles something slightly different. So you might have to kind of translate this a little bit depending on how your institution works. But we've put at the top here the business area. I would say that process mining is kind of a service function. We want to make sure that we're working with a business area to solve important strategic challenges for the bank. That process owner role is going to know exactly what the strategic goals that process is supporting. And it's really important right at the beginning of any project and ultimately for the capability as a whole to be working towards those strategic goals that is recognized and validated by that process owner. these are the important people to engage straight off the bat. And then the team itself is going to be someone that understands how to work with data. So you get raw system data, you need to be able to kind of prepare that data so that it's ready for a process mining analyst. And they will work very closely with this data analyst role, who will translate the process performance metrics, the KPIs, into analytical modeling, so that that process data set that you've created then has a kind of point of analysis, so that you're checking against these performance compliance type questions, so that you have that small team with those roles to actually be working with the data, creating the ability to run checks and show the performance metrics against it. So that's the core, but obviously you need to then work upstream and downstream of that, and that is always engaging the data team more and more. Especially in financial services, we're getting to the point of a data warehouse type model, where all of this raw system data is essentially put into a data lake, sometimes dumped in a data swamp. But we need to engage these basically people who know the database structure, especially for a process mining team. They're often your best friend, because they can help you find that process logic and how it kind of sits in the database logic. And being able to get that very clear means that you can very quickly get that data set into the process mining tool to be able to run your analysis. And then it's important to note the kind of change automation team, I think very early in a process mining capabilities maturity journey, engaging with teams who already exist at the bank, whose goal is to make changes to improve performance in different areas. You want to work with their agenda, make sure that you're feeding into work programs that they already have running, so that you're not creating a new silo, but tapping into other people who can take the insights that you're able to generate and actually do something with them. Because again, ultimately, the process mining capability needs to show that it is adding value across the bank. And then the BPA team very obviously create those kind of standards that you can perform those checks that Monica showed us, the standard process that we can then ingest in the process mining tool to check compliance and conformance, and then feed back into when we do create that process improvement. So how does those two things fit together, of like how the organization sits and where the team sits in this kind of an actual operating model? So I've taken here the model of the operating canvas, just so we can have a kind of plan on the page. The idea here is to show holistically, how does this process mining capability function? So the top quadrant here, we have suppliers, which, you know, I've taken in this framework to mean like, where do we actually get ideas for where we can use process mining? Stefan showed us like clear areas that have transformation need in the financial services area. But the idea is that this capability can suggest itself, but also liaise with other parts of the bank to find out where these areas of high value and high opportunity exist. And that's engaging with business areas, potentially looking at the system as well. Those system database administration teams, or potentially kind of data analysts in a business intelligence function, are already building reporting around high value business questions. So it's to really make sure that you're a participant in these conversations in the wider banking landscape, to find where are these high value questions, where are these challenges that process mining can help address and work with. And then locations, one of the questions that always comes up is where this data exists. And the answer is it exists in different places, depending on how the bank is set up, but also how the processes are set up, and also how data stores are set up. So it might exist in one of or all three of those areas. And again, a process mining capability needs to understand where this data sits and where it lives, and the rules and permissions that you need to adhere to in order to get access to it. Another thing to note here is that we've talked a lot about data coming from source systems, but I think process mining really needs to include non-source system data that's process contextually relevant to the process. So kind of enhancement data, you might think of it. So it doesn't necessarily sit in the source system, but it's still very important to the process. So things like costing data or location data, or if you're interested in sustainability, you know, that there's very often a sustainability team who's collecting carbon costing type information. Again, it's having this knowledge of where this kind of data sits within the process mining team so that you can then enhance the data set to get these really contextually relevant process mining analysis. I've already flagged the operations who is actually involved, but again, it's important to realize that there is a kind of wide community that if you engage all of these roles that we've flagged, that's when you get the most out of process mining. You don't want it to be too data orientated because you might lack the ability to really drive the change in the business, and you don't want it too business orientated because you might lack the data you need to really get to the answers to those high value questions. The systems that you need in this capability to actually do the work, data preparation tooling, making sure that you can obviously use ARIS to build these dashboards, and then having this kind of governance process so that you can train people on how to use as a consumer of the analysis, but also then how to build your own analysis, because the idea is not to deliver static dashboards. Change is dynamic, the process change. You want to make sure that process mining can keep evolving to make sure that your processes are getting better. They change, the process analysis changes to answer new questions, and that the capability has the ability to do that. Just very quickly here, how to actually do this in practice. I am an advocate of this agile process mining approach, where we are delivering chunks of value in as shortest increment of time that we can. The idea here is not to disappear into a data cave, work with data, and then at the end emerge and show dashboards to the business. It's to be constantly validating with that process owner, with the business area, that you're creating an analysis of value. So for a capability to set itself up in these kind of loops of validation of the analysis that's being built, to make sure that the process mining analysis is actually high value and is capable of giving the business case and the insights that you need to actually change a process and create value. So I'm hoping now that we can go straight into questions, because the slides that I've just said are always going to be slightly contextually different to every bank, and I'd love to see that we have some Q&A to address. So
yeah, indeed, Nick. Thank you very much for your presentation. We have 2 questions in the Q&A chat already that Monica answered. And my question to Monica would be, would you have something to add to your answer that you typed into the chat?
Yeah, I was not quite sure if the answers are already published, but okay. So the first question I answered was, is AI integrated that can support interpretation or deeper analysis of process mining KPI results? And I just typed in that we have launched the ARIS Companion, which already supports process discovery and analysis on ARIS process mining, and that we had also that we have a press release on that. And so I also copied the link there. And this is, I think, a very this is having a high impact on the whole discipline, because if you're thinking of AI helping you in kind of analytics and really not with KPIs behind and reasonable and digging all the data, I think this is really this will have a high impact on the whole mining market, and I'm really glad that we have launched this capability. And already in the next release, which will come in June, there will be much more in place that I can see from the point of view now.
Then we have a question, Nick, that's probably one for you. How long does a process mining project typically take? What's your experience?
Yeah, great question. I think it comes down to like the scale of the ambition for the project that you're running. What we always try to do at Software AG when we're implementing it is to break down larger projects so that you're always delivering increments of value. So this goes back to that kind of agile approach to process mining that I was mentioning. I think with our experience, what we're able to do is kind of take on usually 6 to 8 week chunks of work to make sure that at that end of that kind of phase, that deliverable, we've delivered a valuable process mining project. If there is a very complicated process that we want to map because it's so critical to the bank, and we want to get to a full end-to-end state that crosses multiple systems, what you might find is that it takes multiple 6 to 8 week chunks of implementation work to get to that end state. But the intention is to make sure you're getting a valuable analysis at the end of each of those phases. So you start with a data model that's answering a very clear question for one part of the process, and then we iterate outwards to get to that full end-to-end coverage. So how long the process mining project as a whole takes is ultimately, it could be endless because you're constantly tweaking, updating the model, asking the business, are there any additional questions? Is there additional data to add in? But the shortest time is usually that kind of 6 or 8 week mark where you do that core modeling work to start addressing the critical questions.
Good, thank you. Then we have another question that maybe I can answer. Can you please list the top 3 use cases that are implemented at APM customers? From my experience, these use cases typically come from the account opening or customer onboarding area of the bank, both for private and for corporate customers. It's from the payments area and also from loan origination, from loan underwriting. So I would say these are the 3 most relevant ones that we are dealing with. Unless Monica or Nick, you have something to add? No?
No, I mean, that sounds like a reasonable response. I think what I've seen as well is it's when you think of, from a process mining technical perspective, case management is a really good use case for processes. So it's when you think of which bank processes kind of fall into that. So I think of service centers I've seen quite a lot of is how incident response, that's been a kind of a common use case that I've seen, and helping improve the operations of contact centers.
Yeah, okay. Use case from a technical perspective, right? Okay, good. Thank you. So this brings us to the end of our webinar today. I would like to thank Monica and Nick for presenting today. And I would like to thank everyone for attending this webinar. As I said before, this webinar will be recorded and the recording will be made available for everyone to watch the webinar again. And also the documents, the presentation that we shared and some other documents will also be available for everyone to download in the dashboard section on the right side of this panel. So this concludes our webinar for today. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice rest of the day. Bye-bye.